Okay, so File, New Project. Click on the New, make sure Project was selected. This comes up. Make sure at the beginning you can select 3D. You can always change, if you accidentally selected 2D, no big deal. We can change that back once we're in, open up in Unity. Again, look at your location here. We want to save it to the hard drive, not the desktop. Remember, if we restart the computer, you'll lose whatever you put on the desktop. So I'm going to, in this case, select faculty. I'm going to create a new folder, put it in there. Remember, to create a new folder, you just have to select the hard drive or another folder that you're going to put that folder into. Then, first let me choose here. But again, if you're going to create a new folder, select that hard drive, and then this gear should come up on the Mac, and select new folder, and then it creates a new folder. I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. All right, back to Unity here. Okay, so I'm saving it into a hard drive so we don't lose this, because you want to go back and look at this if you need to, so you can work with it and that kind of stuff. All right, then create project. Again, this is your interface for Unity, your workspace area. All right, keep in mind you can expand it, make it a bit bigger, and so on. And as before, as most software programs, there are multiple workspaces that we can look at. So if we go to Window, and instead of saying workspace like you saw it in Adobe, for instance, it says layouts. And so for instance, let's just look at the different layouts real quickly. So if we choose layout 2x3, you'll notice that you'll have the scene view on the top, and this is where you're going to be working out of. And then you have the game view on the bottom. The game view is when you hit play, so that you can see what the user will see. Keep in mind, when you're looking at the scene view is what you see and what you're working with, right? So you will be able to change it around, work with it, and all that kind of stuff. But as soon as you eventually deploy it out, the game view is what the user will see. So you want to make sure that before you deploy it, that the user is seeing what you're seeing, or what you want them to see. Okay? We'll talk about that some more. So let's go back to layout. Let's do the 4-split. So in the 4-split, you can see the different views on here, and they're all scene views. None of them are the game views. So on my top right corner or left corner, we're looking at the top view. So meaning that, if I'm looking from the top down, when I create objects, now if I look from top down, that's what we're going to be seeing at. And again, the front view would be like a 2D, and I'm looking at directly in front, and so on. So the right view, left, and then the perspective view is more like the 3D view, where you kind of move the space around and all that kind of stuff, and you can see the objects more in a 3D perspective. Okay, so that's down at the bottom right corner. Okay? All right. Again, let's go back to Window, Layouts, and let's see that we could go back to default, which is what it opened up in. And the other view is the wide view, which opens up your scene view, so you can see everything in there really well. And you'll notice in your scene view, in one of these different views, that you have the game view on the top. So on the scene view, if you click on the game view, is what, again, the user would see. Which right now they're seeing, a sky, but nothing else in there, right? All right, so I'm going to switch back to default view. And so, again, as I said before, this is, as you're seeing right now, this is the scene view. That's what we're going to be working at. We have the hierarchy window, and then you'll notice if you click on where it says Untitled on the hierarchy view, you'll see that there are already two objects there that already been put on the scene view automatically. One is the main camera. If you click on the main camera, you'll notice that you'll get a little preview, camera preview. And you'll notice that same camera preview is that same view that we saw on the game window or game mode. And also you'll notice that when I clicked on the main camera, it highlighted the camera. And also you'll notice that you'll see a red arrow, a blue arrow, and a green arrow on there, which it's basically what you're going to be using. Those are the different axes that you'll be able to move your camera or any other object. Now, if you click on the directional light, you'll see the directional light up here. The directional light, you can think of the directional light as more as the sunlight, not so much as a spotlight or or something that you can necessarily aim at and you see the spot or you see a halo or something like that. It's acts more like the sunlight, where it's very encompassing of your whole scene. You can move it around and it will have different effects on the objects, like daytime, nighttime type of thing, where you can move it in a certain type of pattern, and then it'll cast shadows different ways depending on how you move it. It'll get darker, lighter, all that kind of stuff. Okay, but it does it on the whole scene, not just on a particular object or so, which we can use. There are different type of lights where we can use so that you could do the flashlight effect type thing or something like that. Okay, but we're not going to get into it in the 4 weeks that we're going to be working here. But just know that you can do that. Okay, so those are the two things that we see on there. You'll notice that right now that it says Untitled. So let's go ahead and save this. We're going to save the scene because we've already created the object or the project, and now we're going to save our scene. What's Untitled is the scene. So we're going to go to File, Save Scene, or Save Scene As. In this case, it's going to be Save Scene As. And we can name it, rename it the same thing. It doesn't matter. And you'll notice it's being saved to the Assets folder. So if I click on this arrow down here so I can see the rest of my where it's necessarily being saved at, I'll see the other folders and drives and stuff like that. So it expands that view there. You'll notice that it's being saved to my 3D Objects folder, and I'm naming it 3D Objects. Right? You know what? Actually, I'm gonna, just so that I can tell the difference, I'm just gonna put an underscore under it, not have any space on it. If you did it already, it doesn't matter. But notice that it's going into the assets folders, and then there are other folders that accompany this project. In order for this project to work, these folders must be part of your project, or for you to be able to work on your project or this particular scene. So then we'll click Save, and then notice under the Assets window, you see the scene. This is the scene itself right here. This is what we're talking about if I tell you open up your scene. I'm telling you to go to the Assets folder and then double click on that object, that the 3D cube icon, to open up your particular scene. Once you've renamed it, just click Save. Okay. All right. Let's create a 3D object. Alrighty, so in order to create 3D objects, we can do it a couple ways. We can do it right from the hierarchy window, or we can also go to our menu to create our 3D objects. We'll do it both ways. So we'll go to Game Object, and we'll select 3D. And right now, we'll just create some random stuff, and then we'll get rid of it, and then we'll create something that makes kind of sense. So we'll just select cube for now. Okay, so we created the cube, as you can see there. So now I'm going to right mouse click, or actually, yeah, let's go to the hierarchy window. Okay, notice it says hierarchy up here. Right mouse click there, 3D object, and select plane. Now notice that the plane was created right where the cube was, and that's going to be always the case. So basically what's going on is that when we select the plane, for instance, you can click on in the scene view, you can click on the plane or the cube. Let's look at let's look at the properties of the cube, the plane, and so on. So if I click on the cube, for instance, and I can click it on the scene view, or I can click it on my hierarchy window. So I can select cube on the hierarchy window. Either way, if I can see it on the scene view, then I can click it on the scene view. If I don't see it on the scene view, then you're going to try to look for it or select it by clicking on the cube view. I'm sorry, the hierarchy view. All right. So notice on the right side, there's the inspector tab there, or window. And you'll notice on there that the position, the X, Y position, is all set to 0. So in the world view that we're looking at right now, all the objects are being set at the X, Y, Z position of 0. Anytime you create that, so again, it's more center. Also, let's change right here from center on the top right here. See where I'm pointing to? Right here where it says center. Change this. Let's select. Let's click on the scene. Just click away in the gray area right here. So the scene view. Let's change this to global. Okay. Now again, click back. Yes. Yes, that's what I'm saying. So change it from local to global. So click on this area. Don't select anything here. Click on the gray area, and then change it from local to global. Okay. And the reason I'm having you do that is so that when we in a few minutes when we go back to, I'm going to show you how to navigate within there. We're navigating in a global view, meaning everything will be centered. Everything will be navigated through that 0, point on your scene view, okay? Not on the local scene view or the local object that may be selected. Okay, so now if I click back on my object there, it still says global, right? If it said local, that means that it'll when I do my navigation through my scene, it will be focused on that object and not on the scene itself. You guys understand what I'm talking about? So basically, if I change it to local on that object, and say this object is like way off, somewhere out in space over there. and then I rotate I want to rotate my scene. Well, my scene won't rotate; it'll rotate on that object. So when I rotate my view and move it around, it'll rotate based on that X, Y, Z coordinate of that object. You see, by changing the local. So local is that's that 0, 0 mark. That's where everything got put into, and then so when I rotate, and you may want to, and you can change it back and forth, as you saw that we can change it. So if you want to rotate around the object only, then you change it back to local. If you want to rotate on the whole scene, in terms of rotating or navigating through it, looking down, up, that kind of thing, then we change it to global. Okay. All right. So so again, be aware of that it's being placed right there. Now, so I'm going to raise my cube. So notice before we could see the whole cube, right? So I'm going to, if you look at where it says Gizmo right here, you'll notice that the Y is the top, or at least the top is the green arrow, top arrow. So that means if I click and drag this, it's only going to click and drag on that Y axis, up and down, right? If I select the red arrow, it's going to only move on that Z axis. Okay? So watch, if I move on that arrow, notice it only, so this is my Z axis in my scene view. And when I select it, it turns yellow. It turns when I select it, so you know that you're selecting that axis. So when I deselect and just select the whole object, it shows me the different axes in that particular scene view. So there's my Z axis and my X axis. And I can undo, by the way, Command Z each time, if I want to undo a movement or if I affected an object in some way, we can do Command Z, just like we did in other software. All right, so again, I'm just going to move it up a little bit, move it out of the, huh?
No, it's not showing the arrows.
Okay, let me look at yours real quick. Oh yeah. Okay, good. I'm glad you did that. What you are right now is in the pan view. Okay. So look up here real quick. So you've selected this icon right here. So select this icon. Now click the object. There you go. So again, what I did is I moved up my cube just so that it rests on top of the plane. If you'll notice that then my y-axis is at 0.55. If we change this to 0.5, it rests right on top of it. So it was halfway down below the, it was below the plane. Basically, on the y-axis, it was resting. So the center point of that object is in the middle. Basically, that kind of lets you know that too. What it considers the center axis of that object. Yeah.
My perspective changed on the object. It's not in the correct.
Okay. Let me look at it real quick. Is it number 13? Okay, yeah. So, what you are in, okay, so this is what you did. So up here, right here, you must have accidentally clicked that, or I don't know, whatever. But yeah, so what you do is you right mouse click here and select free. What you did is, remember those 4 different views that we were looking at before? Top, right, left, and so on. So basically we can see that in this particular view. So we can change it just in this view. So if you want to, I can change it to right view, and notice that's what you have right now. You see? And so we're looking at just on the right side of this, those 2 objects. And notice, by the way, when we look at the right view, that the plane seems to have disappeared. So let's do that anyway. So on the Gizmo right here, in terms of navigating through our system here. So where it says Gizmo, I'm going to put my cursor where it says perspective, right mouse click on that, and select right. Okay? And when we look at that, as you can see, we tend to lose the plane, but it's still there actually. If we right mouse click again, and we select top, notice we can see the plane and the cube from the top. Now we're looking from the top down, right? Or correct? And so on. So if you do the bottom view, by the way, notice what happens. We can see the cube, but we don't see the plane at all. So when you create a plane, realize that it only has a top view. It's not it's sighted on one side. The vertex, the face of it, of a plane, only shows on the top view. If you flip it, you'll notice that it seems to disappear, but it's actually still there. But because it doesn't create a face, it's not what they call double-sided. It's only single-sided. You're only going to see it from the top view. Or if you angle it even slightly a little bit, you can still see it. But if you angle it so that you're seeing the bottom, you may lose the view of the plane. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to free. And you should be able to see it. Now, let me show you how to kind of navigate. That's one way to navigate within your scene, right? Another way is to, let's go ahead and click on the gray area right here. So as someone else before just did, they clicked on the pan tool. So I'm going to click on the on my panning tool, which is this hand tool right here. And then I can move around my scene. You see? So I can, move up, move down, and so on. So I can just move it around if I need to. Because I may have other objects all the way off to the left. I may have objects all the way off to the right. I may have objects all the way back, forward, whatever, right? So again, by using my pan tool, I can move it around. The shortcut to that is the letter Q. So if I hit the letter Q, I can pan around. If I hit the letter W, then I go back to this icon, which is my axis icon. So I can select an object and move it left or right, up or down, whatever I want to do. If I want to rotate the object, notice I'll select this icon right here, which is the letter E, or I just can click it. So in this view, or by using that key right, or clicking on that icon there, which is my rotating icon for an object, not that I can rotate the scene. Notice I'm rotating the plane right now. Now notice if I rotate the plane all the way up, that it seems to have disappeared. Again, I'm rotating at an angle, so I'm seeing the bottom. And how do I know what axis, by the way, I'm rotating in? Well, here's how we know. If you'll notice when we just click on the object, right here, when we click on the object that we want to rotate, you'll notice that the circles around the object indicate the axis that it's going to be rotating. And you can see that on the gizmo right here. So you'll notice here's the red. So the object will rotate on the x-axis when I select this red circle. So that means it'll just rotate, in this case, up and down, like that. If I want to rotate it so that it rotates like this, from the top, then I'm going to look for the yellow. I'm going to click on the object. I'm going to look for that yellow circle. And here's my yellow circle. So notice now it's rotating on that axis only. But I can also rotate it you know, every which way by not clicking on any of those rings, the blue ring or the yellow ring or the red ring. I can just rotate it in whatever way I want to. Notice how it's set that way. See, I'm undo it just to set it back. It's easier that way to set it back sometimes. So that's to rotate the objects, right? So we have the plane, we have a cube. Now, if I want to, again, I want to kind of not rotate the object, but I want to rotate my scene. Just kind of rotate my scene around. I'm going to use, okay, so you saw that we can use the pan tool, right? Kind of move things around a little bit. But if I hold down the Option key, then I can rotate the whole scene on that 0, 0 axis. You see? So my whole scene, I'm rotating my whole scene left, right by holding down the Option key and then clicking and dragging left or right with the left mouse down. So again, hold on the Option key, click and drag. And notice I can click and drag again. When I'm going up and down like this, I'm rotating on the Z-axis. You can see that in the Gizmo. The Gizmo is up on the top right side. So if I want to look over to the left, I want to look over to the or to the left or to the right, or up or down on that particular 0, 0 axis, world 0, 0 axis, I can do that. Okay. Now, another thing you could do is you can right mouse click, and then if you right mouse click and click and drag, notice that it's almost like you're viewing. It's like a first person perspective where you're kind of looking around. You see? So try that. Right mouse click on it, and it's like you're okay. I'm looking around type of thing. Right mouse click. So it's a kind of like first person perspective to look around. And then if you want to, so when you right mouse click, you saw how we can kind of like look around, like first person perspective, right? Then you can use the WASD, the WAS key, to actually move within your scene. So WASD while you're holding down the right key. So sort of again like you're in the player mode, and then you're moving throughout your environment. You can right mouse click, and then click on the W. The W is like the forward key, like the up key. The A is like the left key, you know, like you want to move left. And the S is like you're moving down or back, down or back. And then the D key is obviously like you're moving right. So try that. Hold on the right mouse key, kind of look around a little bit, then hit the W. Notice I'm moving forward into my object. I'm going to move back, holding down the S key. Then I'm going to use my A key to move to the right. I'm going to look to the right. I'm going to look to the left. I'm going to move that way, move back, move forward. But at the same time, I'm just using my mouse key, and I'm moving around. So it's kind of like the game perspective view, right? You're moving around your scene. So again, that's holding down your right key, then the WASD keys. WASD. So play with that a little bit. Yeah. What happened?
I went too far and I
Okay, good. I'm glad you did that. Let's all do that. Let's just go like way off and like, oh, what happened? Where's my stuff? So do that. So let's oh, by the way, you can also use your arrow keys. So on the right side, you can use your arrow keys to you can't do the where you're moving on the left mouse. Let me see if it. Yeah, you can't use your arrow keys to kind of move around. But if you want to move on an object, like forward or back, or on your scene, move forward or backward, almost like the game view, except without the mouse control. So anyway, I'm going to move out. I'm going to move all the way to the right or to the left. Notice I've lost my object because I keep moving to the left. So use your arrow keys and just move away from your, so you don't see any of your objects at all. Because it can happen. You're moving into an object. And what I'm about to show you is especially becomes true when you have a large world, right? And you have a 20 block radius and you're on block 1 and you don't want to kind of scroll all the way over back to block 22. So you can just select block 22, double click on it, and boom, it'll jump to block 22. So again, I've scrolled all the way off my so I can't see any of my objects. So I want to go back to my cube, and you name it appropriately or whatever, and all I do is double click on it, and boom, there's my cube. So double clicking, or you select the cube and you hit the letter F, which means focus. Did that work? Yeah. Okay. And by the way, so renaming objects, like I was just saying, like block 1, block 2, or whatever, you can just click on it. Let's do that real quick on the cube, and we'll name that block instead. Okay. And to do that, again, all you do is just click on once, and then click on it again. Don't double click. Just click on it once. Wait a half a second, whatever. Click on it again. Or you can just right mouse click and select rename. Yeah. You have a question? No? Okay. So to rename it, right mouse click, rename, or just click once and then just half a second click again, but don't double click real fast, then you're doing what we just did, is to select the object. Okay? Everybody with me so far? Anybody behind? Need help?
Yeah, I would like some.
Okay. What is it?
I'm sorry, I think I'm a little behind.
All right, I'm going to look at your screen real quick.
Oh, I'm.
Okay, so what do you need help in? It looks to me you got the plane, you got the cube. What are you needing help with?
No, I'm fine. I'm just.
Okay. Okay. All right. So now let's look at another thing here. So let's click on the main camera, and you'll notice that now I can see, when I click on the main camera, I can see my the view, or I can see what the camera's seeing. But notice in my perspective view that I zoomed in, right? I zoomed in on the cube and the plane. That I can't, that's not the same view that I see on the camera view. And if I go into my game tab, right here, or window, if I click on that, you'll notice that's not the same view that I see on my scene view. You can change that so that whatever you see on there, we can also see what we see on the camera. So that means, what that means though is I have to select the camera, and then I have to kind of rotate the camera and all that kind of stuff to get that particular scene. But that also means then I have to focus out, look for my camera, and then maybe like move in the camera. Notice I'm selecting the camera here, selecting that axis. But then I've moved away from the way that I had the scene, the way I was watching that scene. And maybe that's the scene, that's how I want my user to, when they open up this game, to see it not in this scene. So then I have to go back, zoom in again, you know, type thing, or just double click on my block type. So let's say I want my game to start with this view, but then again I don't want it to zoom out and all that kind of stuff, and set the camera and all, select the camera and then kind of look at the view. What you can do is, and I want everybody to do this because when you eventually give me your project, okay, I don't want the camera looking out into space, right? So when I open it up, I don't want to be like, hey, where's your stuff? And I don't have to go into, because then eventually what you guys are going to do is, for this first assignment, you're going to turn in your whole Unity project, right? And I'll be able to, if I need to, move it around and, be able to see it. But if you give me the build project as a user, I can't go in there and move things around. Like in the scene view, is what you start me off with is what I'm going to see. Okay, so again, let's double click on the block so that it zooms in. So you double click on the block in the hierarchy view, that will focus that block on there. So double click on block. Or cube. Sorry, I renamed it to block. That's right. Forgot. Some of you guys will say cube. So now that I have this, now that I'm seeing this view, and this is the view I want to start off with. For instance, we'll pretend that's the view we want to see the user to start off with. I can go to Game Object, and then I'm going to select Align with View. So Game Object, Align with View. Oops, sorry. I didn't realize I had my cube selected. So I'm going to deselect it by clicking on somewhere out here. Not making sure not to click any object. So again, I'm going to go to Game Object. Oh, I'm sorry. I have to select the camera. Yeah, I have to select the camera. So again, I'm going to select the camera. And you'll notice that this view of the camera is not the same view that we have here. So if I want this view in my scene view to match the camera view, I'm going to do what, as I said before, select the main camera. Game Object. Move to View. No, sorry, Align to View. Align with View. There we go. So again, select the main camera, Game View, then Align with View. What was that?
I have like a red dot.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's interesting. What is that? It says the main camera there. Okay, go ahead and do, yeah. Now do Game Object and Align with View. There you go. I think what happened whenever if you get a game, anything looking red, it means that there was some kind of error. Because notice it kind of fixed itself again, right? Now, if I go to let's go to the game view, that's the view that we see. That's the view that the user will see. And by the way, to actually see what the user will also see, let's click on maximize in the game view. So in the game view right here, by clicking on the game window, click on maximize on play. I'll be with you in a minute. So maximize on play. Then click on the top right here. You'll see the play, pause, forward button. Click on the play button. And that's what, if you're going to go into the play mode, what the user will see when you start off full screen in play mode. Right now, there's no objects moving. You can't navigate. You can't right mouse click. You can't do any of that stuff in this mode because we haven't programmed it to do that kind of stuff yet, right?
Yeah.
So until we get a first perspective setup on here in the game mode, we won't be able to do that like we were able to do in the scene mode. Okay, we have to actually program it to be able to move around, use the arrow keys or the WAS keys and so on. But you get an idea what it would start, what view it would start off when you click on, when you go to the play mode. So I'm going to turn it off by clicking on the play button again. Okay, you had a question.
This is like super related, but I'm curious, can you force an ISO view on the game mode as well?
Which basically would almost be like a 2D view.
Yeah, I find it interesting.
Yeah, so you could do that. You could set it up. If you can have it so that through the program, you depending on the device that they're working on, that you can switch back and forth, depending on the device's capability. So you can set it up that way. Yes.
When I click align with view, the camera just went farther from the view than things.
You might have been selecting something else. So do Command Z. Go back to the way you had it. Let me look at it real quick while you're doing that. Okay. So right now that's kind of like your scene view, right? Oh, you're on the right view only. So yeah, right mouse click and select free. And then kind of pan to, kind of navigate to where you're, or just double click on the block. No, on the perspective view. There you go. Next, zoom out. Oh, by the way, so to zoom out, zoom in, I don't think I've showed you that. You can use the mouse wheel. So I'm zooming in. So I'm going to select.
Does it just zoom in where we point with the mouse?
Shoot. Oh, wait a minute. I'm in the game view. Sorry. Go back to the scene view. Got to go to the scene view and then zoom in, zoom out. Sorry. So go click on the scene view. Now use your wheel, the mouse wheel, to zoom back, zoom out, and zoom in. No, here I was zooming in, right? Sometimes it's easier to zoom in just to double click on the object, but to zoom out, use the mouse wheel. Anyway, so you see you can zoom in, zoom out, and then now you can do, if you want, let's say that that's the view you want. So select the main camera, then go to game object, and then align with view. You see how it aligns it? Okay. All right, so we clicked on the play mode. We're able to do the play mode. We're able to create objects. Now let's go ahead and create something in our scene here, like some kind of object, and be able to understand the relationships between objects and things like that. So understand that right now the version that we have in terms of Unity, we can only take objects like in somewhat like an Illustrator and somewhat hold on, let me think about this, what I want to say. Yeah, so we can only take objects in Unity and put them together, and we can resize them. We can take the object that we're working with, reshape it in different ways, and so on. But we're not able to extrude like vertices or faces of the object. And what I mean by that, so let's double click on block, for instance, and then kind of zoom in, and let's rotate it a little bit. So you'll notice rotate it so that it's kind of off to an angle like so. Remember, I'm using right now to rotate it, my scene. I'm not rotating my object, but I'm rotating my scene here. I'm holding down the option key, left mouse click, and dragging. So what I want you to see is that this cube is made of triangles. You see?
Yeah.
So those are when I say this is the face of an object, this is what I'm talking about. If you could extrude or pull in or pull out, if you be able to grab the face of an object, you would be most likely sometimes grabbing just a triangle. I think if I wanted to grab this whole side of it, I would have to select this face and this face, so it's these two triangles, and then click and drag it, pull it in, pull it out. Okay? Or if I tell you to grab a vertice, then you would be grabbing maybe a point, like an anchor point, clicking and dragging like you did in Illustrator, right? But in this would be in 3D mode. You can grab a side and pull it out, pull this out, pull it down, up, maybe pull this in. Basically, we can reshape this cube if we wanted to. Most of the time. We can't do it right now in Unity. It's called Pro Builder, and we don't have that plugin installed yet. I'm going to work with the technicians to see if they can eventually install it. This is more actually for you guys that are taking Unity. I'm going to have that hopefully set up for you guys. Maybe for you guys here, eventually, we'll have it installed. But anyway, you can't do that right now. So that means, but we can resize it. We can squash it down. We can make this cube into a plane, a double-sided plane if we wanted to. Or we could take, make it longer or whatever we wanted to. You'll see in a few seconds. We can kind of change the shape of it and so on. But eventually, that's how in 3D Studio Max, for instance, you're able to grab vertices and faces and so on and pull them all and kind of create your own shape, head if you want to, kind of mold it just right, and so on. But right now, you can't do that in Unity because we're missing that particular plugin. Anyway, but let's look at it in the sense of what we can do. So as you know, we can rotate it, we can move it around. But if you go to this particular tool right here, so this tool right here, if you click on that, that's how you're going to resize it and change the shape on it. Whether it's a plane or the cube or a capsule or whatever else we play with. So for instance, I can click and drag. Notice I can squish it down to basically a plane. Right? Either way I can squish it whatever way. Now, this is a two-sided object. You see? I squash it down to a plane basically, this cube. Or I can stretch it out. Or squish it down. Invert it on itself. So, I can have a series of buildings, just set up on here. So here's a little little tower there. Now, if I want to make a copy of this, okay, what I'm going to do is duplicate it. So I can select this block or whatever, right mouse click, and duplicate. And then notice now it says block 1. But you go, where to go? Where is it? It's right built into it. Now, again, in this mode right here, if I start clicking and dragging, it's just going to, within that same same position. It's just going to just expand it or whatever you're going to do under. So we have to switch back to our selection mode, X, Y, Z axis. I'm going to click on the W.
What's the hotkey for that?
W.
Double.
Yeah. So I'm going to move it off to the side, and then I'm going to resize it. I'm going to use hit the letter R, so I can resize it again. So again, now if I wanted to, I can have a series of little buildings, and then to duplicate it really fast, Command D, the hotkey for that. You're going to create some kind of a little world that you're putting together, a little house, a little character, or whatever. And in order to do that, we need to set up, for instance, we need to maybe have them put together as one piece. Okay. Again, we won't be able to extrude out parts of it and kind of mold it to what we want. Which, by the way, there's like other tools, other 3D. And let me just say this real quick. There's other software out there, 3D Studio Max I mentioned, where you can create your terrains, create your world, and so on, where you have a lot of more options to be able to do that. And as I said before, hopefully we'll get Pro Builder, and then we'll have that option on here too. But also there's other software that just like if you want to do characters, Poser, for instance, that are just focused on creating characters. And their mesh character, this is what it's called, a mesh, by the way, in terms of your 3D objects here. And you can really do better meshing, and eventually what you want to do is avoid creating so many faces on an object, or creating too much of a mesh in terms of all your objects. That you want to kind of reduce the amount of vertices and faces and so on. But when you do that, your object may not look as real possible. So you'll notice later on as you try to build your object, you might be adding more faces to get it molded just the way you want to. Okay, but then you're thinking, oh, I got to avoid that, because you want to be able to have the user be able to download your characters or whatever and so on, and be able to play with it. You don't want to have to wait all that time, even though it's going to be spectacular. But then if they're waiting too long, they're going to forget this game. I'll just go to another game, right? So you got to keep all that in mind. Anyway, so let's do that. So I'm going to zoom in right here real quick. Say I want to put a little post box down by the building right here or something. So we'll use a couple of the tools right here. Well, we'll put the little post box in a minute here. So I'm going to keep these separate, but now I'm going to create my little mailbox. Okay. So I'm going to start with a cube. So I'm going to right mouse click, 3D object, and cube. Move this out of the way. I'm going to zoom back out. Rotate this. I'm just going to move this out of the way for now. And so I'm going to resize this. I'm going to use my sizing tool. I'm going to stretch it out a little bit. Not going to care about the size compared to the other buildings right now. Now, what I want to do, and some of you guys have started doing this, you started putting objects together, but if you notice, you have to kind of select them all. Like if I want to select this block right here, and then I want to select this block, I can do that by holding down the command key, and then that block, and then I can move them in as one piece, right? So I can do that by going and individually selecting different pieces. But another way is like, okay, I'm going to create this as, I'm going to call it mailbox instead of a cube, or cube, mailbox, right? So another way is to nest them together. And did we do any nesting in Illustrator? So nesting basically means that you're creating what they call a parent-child relationship. So one object becomes the parent, that the one object you select, and then you're able to move around and then the childs all follow along with that object. And basically you're nesting those objects under a main object. We have a main object. So then to that I'm going to continue creating the mailbox using, let's see. So I'm going to select the mailbox. I'm still selecting it right there as it is. I'm going to right mouse click, 3D object, and then I'm going to select cylinder. So there's my cylinder. And notice now the mailbox has a triangle on it. And then you'll notice cylinder is indented. Notice that? So cylinder is indented, meaning now cylinder is nested under mailbox. Okay? And if it isn't, by the way, so those of you who were working on different little objects and putting them together, and you want them all together, if they're not, so notice right now, I'll click, if you accidentally, and some of you guys did this also, you accidentally nested them together and you were trying to move them and you couldn't move them around. It's like, hey, what's going on? Well, it's because you nested it together. And you can, break that relationship by clicking and dragging it down or up, and now they're not together again. So they're separate. But if I want to put them together, which is what some of you guys have, I can click and drag it into the main object, and then release it, and then it'll nest it.
Yeah.
The concept is this: we're creating what they call a parent-child relationship, right? So I want them to be put together. So now what happens now that I have this parent-child relationship, I can click on this object, the main object, and I can click and drag it and move it around. And they both move together without me having to select both of them together, right? If I just want to move that one particular object that's been nested, I can still do that. Notice I just moved this one object, right? But it's nested under here. So then if I move this way out here, when I select the main object, notice you get the little Gizmo boxes in between both of them.
Yeah.
Notice both of them get moved together, even though they're separate. They're floating separately. And that's what when I walked around, some of you guys accidentally did that. You nested the plane with the cube, and you were trying to just move the cube, and then you would then the cube and the plane were moving together. You know what I'm saying? And if you nested them, you either had to just select the plane by itself, which was the child. Anything that's indented is considered the child. Okay. And the reason we're doing this is so that I don't have to go back and select them individually and then move them if I want to move it, like a character, for instance, or a building with windows somebody was creating. So you can just nest them like that. So I'm going to rotate this on this axis. So basically I'm just moving it up to create like a little mailbox type thing. So you'll notice I'll have to resize it because my cityscape is this mailbox is huge compared to my cityscape, right? So again, this is going to be helpful that they're nested because then I can just select the mailbox, resize the mailbox, and it'll resize everything with it. Back to making my mailbox here. So I'm going to select the resize tool right here, the letter R, W, oh, by the way, another thing that I noticed that you may need to do is when you move your objects or you make your objects, sometimes it's better just to type in the number. And also, by the way, you can also reset your objects. Let me show you how to do that. So, for instance, say that I want to select this cube and I want it back to a cube, right? For whatever reason. I can select that object, and on the top corner right here, on the inspector, once I selected that object, on the top right corner is a little gear right here. I'm going to select reset, and that will reset it back to a cube. Notice it resets it to the 0, 0 position and back to the way the cube was. So if you need to, if you deformed it in a way that you can't work with it anymore, and you don't want to redraw it to or replace it or whatever, maybe try that. Or again, just try changing the XY scale or Z-axis, whatever it is that you might have changed. Which, by the way, gets me into the scale view, which is again where you may need to rescale things. Keep in mind 111 is the default scale, 100%. Anything below that, 0.7 is 70%. 1 point, if you do 3, 4, 5, whatever, 3.5 is 300%, and so on. Keep that in mind in terms of the size. Okay, back to the mailbox here. All right, so here's a little view of so I've used the capsule. I selected the cylinder, or cylinder, and my cube. I'm gonna, inside of the mailbox, I'm gonna create, select another cylinder. But this time I'm going to use it as a post. Okay, so there's my mailbox, right? It's got the little post and the mailbox itself. I'm going to place that by one of my little cityscapes. So now, all I have to do is select the mailbox. See, now, right now I have two cylinders, which is this post and the top of the mailbox. And the main object is the cube, which I renamed to mailbox. Right? So I can select that, and I want to move this, down at the bottom, resize it, and so on. In terms of like maybe placing it over here somewhere, right? So to do that, again, all I have to do is select mailbox, and then now I'll just move it in place. So I'm going to scale it down so that, let's see here. So I'm going to scale it down, and so I scale everything to proportion, by the way. In order to scale everything to proportion, so I don't select this, and then the different axes, I'm right down on the middle part of my selection there. So I'm going to click and drag, scale it down, move it into place, zoom in. Again, I'm going to scale it one more time. Okay, so there's the mailbox in front of the building, right? I need to rotate it. So again, what I did here is I made the cube, then the cylinder, and I set up I nested it by clicking and dragging into the main object, what I would consider whatever the main object you want it to be. Then they both become nested. So it could be a capsule, it could be another cube, whatever you want it to be, a sphere, and so on. This way, again, this becomes one whole object, right? So now, if you'll notice when I close the triangle, you don't see the rest of the stuff, but that particular object may be created by many different things. Okay, so let's do a quick little Command S, and that saves your scene. So once you have it set up, you can do once you have your little cityscape set up, remember if you right mouse click and you use the WAS key, you can look around. Oops, too far. And then kind of like walk around your little block right there, sort of. And by the way, with this particular mouse, if you press down on the wheel, it becomes the pan tool. So if you don't have to go back and you can just stay on the move tool and then press down on the pan tool or press down on the wheel and you can pan in your scene that way. So once you have it set up, then again, if you click on the camera, see if that's the view you want, and notice like that's not necessarily the view I want. And I want it to start off this way. Then you're going to go to Game Object and Align to View. Then when I hit the go into play mode, this is what it starts off with. That view that